The UNM Board of Regents voted last week to cut men's soccer, men's and women's skiing, and women's beach volleyball. It was a controversial decision to say the least. Albuquerque Journal staff writer Jeff Grammer covers the Lobos, and along with reporting scores, he's also sought out information about the financial situation in the athletics department. He sat down this week with producer Sarah Gustavus to talk about transparency and why the business of sports matters as much as what happens on the field or the court.
Jeff Grammer, staff writer at the Albuquerque Journal. Thanks for stopping by New Mexico PBS.
Absolutely.
The big story this week is there are 2 complaints that have been filed alleging the UNM Board of Regents violated the State Open Meetings Act. What's in those complaints?
So last week, obviously, the big Board of Regents meeting, the special meeting, was to vote on a proposal to cut sports. And while they posted that meeting like they were supposed to do for the Open Meetings Act on July 3rd, which was enough notice to announce the meeting, they kept it very vague what the meeting was about. It was to decide on athletics matters. Now, most people knew it had to do with the cutting of sports, but the main part of this complaint has to do with the fact that the report as to what sports were being cut and the details and specifics about how they were going to cut them wasn't released until about 5 p.m. the night before a 9 a.m. meeting. You, in the state of New Mexico, you're required to give proper notice to the public before a public meeting so they know what they're going to go talk about. That's one of the 3, there's really 3 parts of the complaints. That's the main one, is that there wasn't really sufficient notice. And another part of it has to do with some comments made during the meeting. One of the regents, Michael Brasher, did acknowledge that while the report came out late last night and didn't give a whole lot of people time to go through the report, he had been kept up to speed on things by talking with Garnett Stokes, the president, about the details. One of the regents, Garrett Adcock, the student regent, read his decision basically from a prepared statement that had been written before the meeting. So 3.5 hours of public comment obviously didn't sway his decision at all. And it sort of had this feel of everything was predetermined. Well, if there's a rolling quorum, that makes the meeting invalid. And a rolling quorum basically says they got together and they were kind of deciding these things before the public meeting ever happened. And that could invalidate the meeting as well. If the meeting is invalidated, you have to redo the meeting. It may not change anything, but you're going to have to redo it. You're going to have to repost it. One other element of the most recent complaint has to do with Garrett Adcock, the student regent. He graduated from UNM Law School in May, and you were required to be a student regent. Now, we have since found out he is going to enroll in a class this fall. Whether that's to keep his status as a student regent or not, I don't know, but he did graduate in May, and that was one of the parts of the complaint as well.
UNM Athletics has been struggling for years with financial issues. Do you think the decision to cut sports was a surprise?
Certainly shouldn't have been. It wasn't for me. Don't get me wrong. I get that most people turn into the sports section aren't there to read financial news. But for 5 years, I've been writing about the deficits in UNM athletics. They have now posted, with this most recent fiscal year completing June 30th, they will have had 9 of 11 years where they finished in the red. Now, most people kind of understand that college athletics isn't supposed to be a very profitable, but they are expected, and UNM leaders continue to say they're expected to finish in the black just like every other department, and they haven't been. I've been writing about that in the Journal for 5 years. If you go back just to about 2 years ago, after they posted for fiscal year 16 a $1.5 million deficit, Paul Krebs said the former athletic director, Paul Krebs, said at an open public meeting to the Board of Regents in October of 2016, this economy, this community cannot support what we're doing right now. Something drastic is going to have to change. We're going to need more help. We're going to need more student fees. We're going to need something, or we're going to have to make some serious changes, and we're going to have to probably do something drastic. Student Regent Ryan Berryman at the time asked, does that mean cutting sports? And Paul Krebs said yes. So as early as October of 2016, very specifically, cutting of sports was not only out, it was out on the Regents' table. So it shouldn't have been a surprise, even if you go back to just this spring when they approved a budget that called for $1.9 million in reduction in sports. None of this really should have been a surprise last week, but I still think a lot of people were taken by surprise. Maybe they shouldn't have been, but it's hard to prepare. You don't really fathom that they're actually going to cut a sport. That's something that's hard to wrap your mind around until they actually do it.
I can understand that. Some lawmakers came and had a press conference and said we would have helped. Do you think everyone's at the table talking about all the options?
I don't think everyone's at the table talking about these options. And again, to what I just said, I think they should have been. There's no excuse for lawmakers to come in after the decision's been made and say, you know, we would have helped. Well, you could have, and maybe you should have. I think it's, I don't want to necessarily say it's entirely disingenuous. I do think they want to help, but it does smack of kind of swooping in an emotional time to try and garner favor with a lot of emotional people and saying, you know, we would have done something to save you guys when maybe you could have. Last legislative session, maybe something could have been done. So what the lawmakers this week have said is come talk to us, come ask us for help. UNM has already made their decision though, so I don't know exactly what's going to change. Time is of the essence right now. There is some urgency because the soccer season starts in about 2.5 weeks. There's an exhibition match. These players are allowed to transfer right now. If they know they're not going to exist, if the team is not going to exist 1 year from now, some of them may want to transfer right now. And when I say now, I mean like this very week, they may want to go and join another team. So if someone's going to try and swoop in and save the soccer team or any of the teams that were cut, the women's beach volleyball team or the men's and women's ski team, they better do it now. This can't be something that takes 2 or 3 weeks to decide or 2 or 3 months to decide.
Yeah. You've sought records on the finances of the athletics department, including naming deals through the pit. What information have you been able to get?
So it's been kind of hit and miss. If you go back to when Wise Pies got the naming rights deal of the pit of University Arena, they released at the time, they gave people, you know, here's the deals, here's the terms. In other cases, that hasn't been the case, and that's what we're seeking now. Branch Field at University Stadium, the football field is named after Margaret and Turner Branch. We cannot get that contract. We don't know if any money's been paid towards it. At the time, they got a pretty large pat on the back and a challenge to the business community saying, do what these people are doing. They're helping Lobo Athletics, but we don't know if they've paid anything. And we don't know if the terms of that deal, we don't know what they all get. So the UNM Foundation has sort of said, well, we have the right to protect donor information. And of course you do. We aren't really asking for donor information. We're asking for a contract of a business deal. This isn't really just a donation. If it was just a donation, it's somebody giving money to a cause that they believe in. What this is in exchange for advertising, in exchange for marketing, we're going to give you some check, some amount of money, and you're going to plaster our name on a very visible field that will be on every televised football game, on a building that thousands of people will see. They are getting something in exchange for this. So this is a business transaction. This is not just a donation that really falls under the we can protect donor information.
For a public institution.
For a public institution, which is the very obvious part of all this. And I think what you see, this is sort of and New Mexico is not alone in this, but what's heading down this path is foundations at universities everywhere. A lot of private business is being done through these foundations, or a lot of public business rather, is being done through these foundations because they think they can make it private. And that's just not the case. If you're doing the business of a public institution, that is public business.
A judge did rule against the UNM Foundation. They're appealing it right now as the case was filed by journalist Daniel Libet. So we're going to see what happens with that next,
absolutely.
with the UNM Foundation. Jeff, you've taken some heat on social media about your reporting on UNM finances. I've seen some of that. What's your response when fans say, just stick to reporting the scores, just stick to the things that we love about sports?
Yeah, I think this past week probably shows better than anything I can explain, you know, on Twitter especially, why you can't just stick to reporting the scores. There are soccer fans right now that are about to not have their team to cheer for anymore. And if we had just stuck to reporting scores, we wouldn't have even known this was coming at all. Now, again, we spoke earlier about this surprised some people. Maybe people could have been paying attention. But I have been reporting in the Journal for 5 years. Daniel Libet, certainly in the past year and a half, has done a tremendous job of exposing a lot of stuff going on with UNM athletics. And this isn't unique to UNM. This should be covered this way everywhere. This is a public body. This is a lot of public money. And this affects thousands of people in the community. And you should know where the money's going. You should know if the people getting rich off the backs of college athletes, if they're using that money appropriately or not, and if they're doing things for the community, if they're doing things that are gonna maybe jeopardize the future of that sport. And that's what was going on here, and that's why it was important to report all those things that weren't just covering the game and reporting the scores. And if some people are upset about that at times, I'm okay with that, but it's important to cover it all.
Yeah, I mean, UNM's a major employer in the state.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's all these connections. We also, we've been talking this week about how cutting soccer at UNM, what impact might that have on these efforts to get a professional soccer team set up in Albuquerque and really going?
And it is interesting because right now it is a time when a pro soccer team is coming here. The USL has already said they're coming to Albuquerque. There's a very successful semi-pro team in the Albuquerque Soul that plays here. Soccer is unquestionably a big sport in New Mexico. What does that mean for the business community? I guess we're about to find out. I do think that the camps that UNM Soccer puts on, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of kids from around the state and from other states that come to participate in these camps. And I think we will find out that it does have a huge impact. Just the existence at all of the team has a huge impact on the soccer community and the business community in New Mexico. How much of an impact, we'll find out, I guess. But there's no doubt that there is an impact that is about to be lost because of the cut of the men's soccer team.
Well, Jeff, thank you for your reporting, and thank you for stopping by to talk about, these issues and why they matter.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.